Joe, Miami versus Louisville, the ACC matchup of the weekend. Look, Miami, the last two times that we've seen them play have been very chaotic. They win in a thriller against Virginia Tech. They have to storm all the way back against Cal. Now Louisville comes into play here. How do you see this game going?
Yeah, I'm just going to be very frank about this. I don't think this Louisville team is very good. I think that a lot of people tried to paint this Louisville team to be a playoff contender, ACC championship game contender. I see a transfer portal roster that is not playing cohesive, consistent football. They have been a mess in the red zone. They're one of the worst teams in the country in red zone success rate, which is a huge problem. But where I see where there's going to be clear success against the team that is slinging the rock. We know that Miami has had their problems the last two games where they've made some critical mistakes. More importantly, Cam Ward has turned the ball over that has allowed for their opponents to build leads, but they're so good, they're so potent through the air that they've climbed back and that they've pulled out and won those football games. But the difference between Louisville and Virginia Tech and Cal is that they had strong defensive lines that got after Cam Ward, and they had really quality secondaries that were great at turning over opposing quarterbacks. So far this year, Louisville is one of the worst teams in the country in sack rate and interception rate. I don't have faith that Louisville has what it takes to keep up with Miami in this football game. I think that they're fine, and they've got some great athletes, and they can pick up some big splash plays. But I'm not even going to say that if Miami plays a cleaner game, I think that this is a game where Miami plays cleaner because there's nothing that tells me, unless they completely shoot themselves in the foot, that Louisville has been taking advantage of opportunities given to them by opponents.
What Miami team's going to show up? Joe, I mean, yeah. I know you talked about sack rate, but Louisville is tied for 51st in the country in sacks. They don't send a lot of pressure. They like to play coverage. I'm going to throw this out there. I don't know if – let me say it like this. I saw Louisville do some really good things in the passing game against an elite secondary in Notre Dame. They did some really good things. You're right in the inefficiencies of them on defense, and you can't ignore that, okay? But you know what I can't ignore? On paper and talent per talent, you're right. Miami should run away with this one. But after you have situations versus Virginia Tech and Cal, I'm not ready to I can't do it. I can't do it. Should you run away with this game? Yes. But you got to stop playing down to the level of your opponent too. I mean, and that's the bottom line with them. Joe, they're number one in the country in total offense. They're top 15 in the country in total defense. The problem is that they make crucial mistakes that keep teams in ball games. And I'll tell you this too. Joe, they have a massive problem defensively giving up big plays. Cal and Virginia Tech showed us that. I mean, they're 15th in the country or 14th in the country in total defense. That's fine. Joe, look at what Cal did. Every bit of success that they had came off of explosive plays. The running back in the flat that you let go for 70. You had massive runs from Mendoza. And I get that you had to go all the way across the country to do that, right? However, I look at this team and just say to myself, look, listen, I mean, if you're not going to limit these explosive plays, I do think Brom and company can find ways to get some of these explosives on you. Like, I do think that they can. But, man, I think talent does overcome in this one. I think Miami's just more talented, and they overcome and win. I'm not willing to say that this one's going to get out of hand. I think it's going to be close, Joe. I really, really do, because I don't trust that Miami's not going to give up explosive plays after they've given up 10-plus the last 2 weeks or last two games that we've seen them play.
And this being at Louisville certainly does help the case for Louisville. I got to give credit for the way, again, and I did this after they beat Cal, the way that they were able to rally on the road. My biggest thing with Miami is that they've played such sloppy football the last 2 weeks that at a certain point, things do need to get corrected. And I made the statement that if they played at least a 60% cleaner game, I'm not saying completely eliminate the turnovers and the sacks and all of those problems, the big plays that they allowed. If they're able to play 60% of a cleaner game, they're able to blow opponents out. They're that good of a team with the level of athletes that they have at receiver, with the potentially dominant run game that they could have, but they don't get to lean on because they're chasing teams. this does feel like it could be that game where they're in a little bit more of a rhythm because they're coming out of the bye week. BetOnline remains your top spot for all of your live betting action and contests. NFL, college football, UFC, NHL are all in full swing. BetOnline is your number one source for wagering news, odds, trends, and predictions with both desktop and mobile access at any time. Head to BetOnline today and use promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, for 50% off your first deposit. That is a 50% welcome bonus. BetOnline, where the game starts. I don't know that for certainty, and you're 100% right. Which version of Miami do we get in this matchup? Are we going to get the Miami team that we know that is able to just completely smoke teams, or are we going to get the one that's going to play with its food for 3 quarters and then finally find a way to win when there's 5 minutes remaining? They need to get out of this terrible habit because they might be able to dominate through a really easy schedule. They have probably the easiest schedule out of any of the remaining top 10 teams. But when they have to face off with Clemson in the ACC championship game and potentially a playoff opponent,
you can't do that against Clemson.
No, you can't be doing this shit against teams that have really good defenses and some serious big playmakers.
So I got to throw this out there. Louisville's 20th in the country in passing offense, and that's what scares me. I'm not saying Miami's secondary is bad or anything like that, but there comes a part where, look, I think they're more organized and more disciplined in what they do throwing the football. I mean, Joe, I know that Chuck threw a pair of interceptions against Notre Dame, and they've had another bad loss. It is what it is. But I also know that those explosive plays exist. And you're right. I'm going to take Miami to win here, but in no way do I think that this is going to separate. Should Miami separate themselves from Louisville? Yes. I think both me and you are on the same page there. I just can't do it yet. Like, I got to see you actually do it. The last game that I feel like that you've played a complete game was Florida. The first game of the year, I feel like that was the most complete game that you played. And, Joe, I got to be real with you. There are 2 pass-happy in moments. You got to start giving your running backs the football. Damian Martinez is a dude. And I know that Shannon and company, they come from the air raid style of football. I was there. He was the running backs coach when at Southeastern under Hal Mumme. I know his principles. I know what he wants to do. He's going to have to understand that he's got 2 running backs that are really good, and then you got an O-line that can run the football. At some point, you got to control the game and control the clock, and I think they'll actually get back to doing that. All right.